Google and Apple are both skyrocketing in the after hours. So that is essentially going to be the lens that we're going to be looking at the overall market. I'm going to try to be as unbiased as possible, but given the fact that Google and Apple, large tech stocks, are extremely bullish like this, it tells us that the overall market should be getting a bit of a bounce. So we're going to take a look at the large tech stocks, the S&P, the NASDAQ, the Russell, the VIX, all that good stuff, crypto, and put it all together, what the next steps are for the market. So without further ado, let's get started with the video. So here's the main news for Google. So Alphabet up after U.S. judge rules Google will not have to sell Chrome in search monopoly case. So U.S. judge rules in online search monopoly case that Alphabet-owned Google will not have to sell off Chrome. Judge also rules that Google will not be required to divest Android operating system. Rules Google must share information with competitors to remedy online search monopoly, but Google is not required to cease payments to Apple or others for preloading Google products. So this is huge. Obviously, this was a very important pending case in Europe and the US where Google was basically, there were some implications that Google was going to need to do some extra things for its company, but the fact that now they don't need to, it's a very big sigh of relief. And this caused Google, you could clearly see Google now, we could see here Google is up about 7% in the after hours. This is very, very bullish, obviously. So that's just one tech stock. We're not even taking a look at Apple, okay? All right, so essentially, as we just read, right, Google will not be barred from paying Apple to make Google the default search provider on its devices. All right, so that's very, very positive news for Apple as well. So as you can see, Apple is up about 3.5% also. So this news was in conjunction. Very, very good news for both Google and Apple here. And that's really the reason why they're both doing really well. So we have major resistance on Apple at around 240. We have obviously major resistance again at 245, 250, etc. But it depends on where we open. With Google being up 7%, with Apple being up 3.5% after hours based off this news, this sort of structure that we have here is basically irrelevant. So Apple being this bullish, most likely what's going to end up happening is we're going to open above 234. And the Bollinger Band to the upside, let me move the name here. The upper level of the Bollinger Band here on Apple is starting to tighten. So tomorrow we're not only going to be lowered, this Bollinger Band is going to be tightened. We're also going to gap up. So this has a lot of room to the upside if these levels hold. But now moving forward, right? Say for example we do open up at 237 on Apple. The level that needs to maintain itself for continued move up is going to be this 233 level. It's the prior highs, okay? Because we've seen, first of all, the 230 level was acting as a major level of resistance on Apple. The other major level is obviously the highs here. If this zone can hold as support on the way down, then we can really do some damage to the upside on Apple here, okay? So Meta is also very, very interesting. It's very important to recognize what's going on, okay? So Meta, we opened outside of the lower level of the Bollinger Band here. When a large tech stock is trading outside of the lower level of the Bollinger Band, it shows extreme overextension to the downside. It shows that there is a high likelihood chance that we should end up bouncing. That's exactly what ended up happening today on Meta. We were very far overextended to the downside. As you can see, we opened outside the lower bands. Bullish. Generally, you lean bullish on these sorts of setups. It's not always a guarantee, but in the day, right? In terms of day trading when you're trading outside of the lower bands, for a day trade, it's generally a really, really solid trade to go long. That's exactly what ended up happening on Meta. Meta is also going to be up in the after hours as all of these large tech stocks most likely either are going to be flat or green, based off of the news with the antitrust that's basically going on with Google and Apple, right? We have major resistance here at 755. This is still like we have a lot more room to go to the upside for us to really become bullish. But just on the day, this was a really, really solid opportunity to go long. And there's still, like, we basically essentially need to break above 755, 760 for a solid bullish recovery in price action, in my opinion. And if we get above 750, 760, we could easily see highs and we could easily see above 800. Meta to 1,000 is also really, really plausible in the next year. So this is all, it's just a matter of where we're going to go. You could see that we're trying to bottom itself out. This is a falling wedge pattern, overextended to the downside in terms of the Bollinger Band. We just need to reclaim these levels of resistance, get more upside, and we're going to see what ends up happening. But Meta, so far, so good, honestly. So let's see what ends up happening with the rest of the tech stocks. Tesla, not as bullish in the after hours as these other stocks, right? There's not much antitrust information going on. We're still holding above the 320s, right? 320s was always a very, very major level of support. This zone has always been very, very important here, right? The 320 zone, right? We're holding above. But this is a really, really cascadingly, this is bearish. This is not a very, very bullish situation here that we're looking at. And what we would rather see on Tesla is, once again, to really see some strength. I would either want to go long in this zone here between 315 to 320. Or what needs to occur for bulls to reclaim momentum is a break above 345 to 350. Both are decent longing opportunities, in my opinion. But once again, as we've been saying, all of these are good dip buying opportunities on Tesla. I do think we're going to end up seeing this 445, this 460 level in the next year. All very bullish opportunities on Tesla. And by no means is this now the time to really, really become bearish. Sure, in the short term, you could, could lean a bit short, but now that we've already dropped so heavily since the 350s, now we're at 330. Not the best time to start chasing a short, but all in all, these are the two zones that I would rather try to go long at, and that's basically it on Tesla. What we're seeing, right? What we're seeing is Tesla is nearing a level of support, and it's trying to stagnate a bit. That's what we're looking at on Tesla. On Google, we obviously showed a lot of strength in the after hours. Apple is also showing a lot of strength in the after hours. And Meta is also trying to bottom itself out. Microsoft is not really doing too hot, honestly. It's still doing its thing. It's just not really getting that much aggressive buying pressure. The same level still applies to the upside. The 513 level to the upside still applies as a major level of resistance. And aside from that, it's just drifting lower. You don't see any monstrous strength, no monstrous weakness. It was one of the big losers recently where we ended up breaking the uptrend level. But now that it's in this, bear flag sort of situation, let's see if the large tech stocks as a whole, the rest of the stocks getting a lot of buying pressure, causes Microsoft to get some strength. Once again, the 513 level is very, very important on Microsoft. Amazon a bit flat, should be getting a bit of love for this antitrust. So you could see that Amazon really, really held the 222 level absolutely perfectly. We wicked off of this level, and now we have a gap to fill at around 228.50, and the resistance at 230. So once again, we're at a support. Do we go short at a level of support? No. Is Amazon trying to bottom itself out? Yeah, but the issue now is 228 and then 230. This is going to be a very major level of resistance here, this zone here, for a continued move to the upside for Amazon. But overall, Amazon is trying to create a bottom. So what we see so far is Amazon, Apple, Google, Tesla also trying to bottom out. Meta also trying to bottom out. Microsoft also trying to bottom out. And the last but not least, we have to take a look at Netflix. Netflix also trying to bottom itself out. So across the board, a lot of these large tech stocks are trying to bottom themselves out. We're holding the 1190 level, which is the 23.6% fib on Netflix. We have resistance at 1220 and then more resistance at 1250. These are good dip buying opportunities on Netflix. I see new highs into 1400 in the near future on Netflix. And it looks, overall bullish. So I'm not saying the overall market is just going to rise and rally, etc., based off of this news from Apple and Microsoft. Sorry, Apple and Google. But what are we seeing pragmatically? All of the large tech stocks are starting to bottom themselves out. And we're seeing some strength out of a few of them. So we can't automatically just be bearish on tech. So now what I want to look at is a chart of the VIX. And the reason why monitoring the VIX is so important is because it has an inverse relationship to the market. If the VIX is rising, that means the overall market should be falling. Now, we also monitor the Bollinger Bands, right? And what we're looking at here is essentially when things are trading very far outside of the upper bands, it wants to reverse back in. When things are trading very far outside of the lower bands, things want to also bounce. Currently, prior to this news on Apple and Google, the VIX closed above $17. $17 is a very, very important level on the VIX. If we're trading above 17, if we're trading above 17, that's bullish for the VIX. If it's bullish for the VIX, that means the overall market should be bearish, okay? Now, with this news, the market should be gapping up in the after hours. Obviously, this is not going to be a continued... We're going to see a pullback in the VIX if the market is gapping up in the after hours, okay? Now, what I really, really want to look at, right, for moving forward is, cool, yeah, the market's going to gap up, the VIX is going to go down. Awesome. The Bollinger Bands on the VIX, the upper level of the Bollinger Bands are dropping pretty heavily, and the lower level of the bands are increasing. Now, as this upper level drops like this, it means that there's less room to the upside on the VIX before it becomes overextended. So now tomorrow, right, say for example the VIX, the Bollinger Band ends up over here. If the VIX gaps down over here, one green candle will send us outside of the upper bands. The more we are overextended to the upside, the less likely chance we'll get a continued move to the upside on the VIX. Okay, so the upside move as the upper band constricts like this becomes stunted. So if the upside move on the VIX becomes stunted and there's less chance that we will see an upside move in the VIX, that means that it is essentially bullish for the overall market. So if the VIX is going to be dropping, right, if the upside move is stunted, that means the VIX is bearish. That would cause the overall market to be bullish. And that's currently what I'm looking at on the VIX here. So if we're looking at the S&P 500, right, obviously we're gapping up now in the after hours. We closed down here right below the 50% fib. We're gapping up, and now we have gapped up above the 38.2% fib. So once again, right, the main level of resistance that needs to break to the upside on the S&P, the ES futures, is this 23.6% fib, which is 64.65. If we can hold and break above that, I'm going to also explain the levels on the SPY and the QQQ. But essentially, we're gapping up in the after hours primarily because of Apple and Google's news. They're both up in the after hours, right? So just if that news didn't occur, if the news never came out, this is a really bearish. This is a bearish setup. This is a very, very bearish setup. We dropped very, very hard. We bounced, but this is still a very bearish setup, regardless of the news. This would be like literally the perfect time to go short. This and here would be the best times, in my opinion, to go short. for a continued move lower, because purely this is just not a bullish setup. We failed the uptrend level. We broke very aggressively to the downside, and the market just looks like it wants to be weak. So the fact that this news occurred, in my opinion, really saved the market. In terms of a day trade, I would be going short here, right? In terms of a day trade, I would usually be going short here. We would be leaning short. But damn, like the news really saved the market. That's that for the ES. So for the NQ, obviously we're also gapping up in the after hours, primarily because of Apple and Google's very bullish news in the after hours. We closed right at the 23,280 level right here, right? And then this level right here, the 23,500 level, is such an important level of resistance. If this news did not occur, if Apple and Google did not report good news in the after hours, this would be such an amazing bearish setup. Anything below 23,600 would be a solid bearish setup, and it would be a great opportunity to go short. And damn, it's just the news really saved the market. You could see that we're trying to create a bit of a wedge. There's massive resistance here. We're going to need a really strong move to the upside for the NASDAQ to really push forward. And the 23,600 level on the NQ is very important level of resistance. Generally, we should be breaking above this. With the news as well, I'd be surprised if the news just about faces and Apple and Google just really give back all their gains. I'd be surprised. But that is the level that needs to hold. And, as support, we're still holding the prior levels of support here. We wicked down. If that news didn't occur, this is a bearish setup on the market in general. So the news really needs to save the market, or else this is going to drop. And we're going to see the lows from August being retested on the NASDAQ, in my opinion. So this is a daily time frame of the SPY. For continued move to the upside, 639 needs to remain as resistance or support. So if we can hold 639 as support on the SPY, we can continue rising. We're obviously gapping up in the after hours because of the news from Apple and Google. But this is clear cut. This would not be a bullish setup. We would generally, at max, we would get a retest of 642 to 643, and this would be a continued move lower. And the reason why if the news didn't occur, the reason why I would be very bearish on the setup is because this would literally 642 to 643. If you make a fib level, very colorful chart now. But if you make a fib level from the most recent highs to the most recent lows, 642 to 643 is what? This is between the 50 to 618% fib. This would be where the market would want to, all the people that went long here would take profits over here. And then right there would be where the market is going to make a decision to see whether or not this would drop, or if this would hold. We would pull back and retest 640 and rip higher. If this news did not occur, man, this would be a fantastic area to go short. And generally, I would be very bearish on the market. A gap down, this weakness to start the month of September. Not the most bullish setup, not the most bullish sign. But that's what I'm going to say. The 642 to 643 level on the SPY, very major level of resistance. 639 needs to hold on the SPY for a continued move to the upside. That's that for the SPY. All right, so here's the daily chart of the QQQ. As you can see, we are, once again, bro, if there was not positive news on Apple and Google, this would be a really bearish setup. Obviously, in the after hours, the market is rising, right? Because Apple and Google are skyrocketing, right? But again, man, bro, I would be short as we touch 570. This would be an amazing opportunity to go short. We do have major support here at 557. We retested basically the exact levels of support back here at 560, right? We held. Right below 560 is 557. Major support as well on the QQQ. But damn, this would be a really awesome. I'm telling you guys, this would, on a on a 1 minute time frame. If this setup showed up on a 1 minute time frame, bro, I promise you, this would be an amazing short. I have a 90% success rate for a reason. This would be a freaking amazing opportunity to go short. And this news really saved the market for now. This is... Whew. Let's see. Let's see what happens tomorrow. Damn. But yeah, that's really it. Above 570 to 571 is the level of resistance that needs to break to the upside now. Below, we're going to see if 560 holds. That's really it. We have levels of resistance here at 568, which is the gap down. Can't do anything else, really, for that matter. So if you guys aren't in the Discord, I think you guys should end up joining. So I have a free trades channel where I post my trades as well. But to be honest, this is really, really solid. So this morning I was saying that NVIDIA is trading outside the lower level of the bands. It usually leads to a bullish play as a good opportunity to buy dips for day trades. That's exactly what I ended up doing. We went long NVIDIA and the QQQ. I shared both of these in the free trades channel at 9:35 a.m. Both of these skyrocketed up and both did very, very well. Overall, the past few days have been really, really fantastic. It's not September 1st, it's September 2nd. But regardless, the proof is in the pudding. So if you guys want access to every single time I'm entering or exiting any single trade, you could click the link in my bio. You could click the link down below. You'll see it. And yeah, I hope you guys, if you guys have been watching this long and you're not in the Discord, you've been watching this long into the video because you see that I know what I'm talking about. But, if analysis is what you guys want, that's fine. But I also shared the exact price that I'm entering and exiting everything. As you can see, this I go into detail what this means so that when you are on your brokerage account, you can see, okay, what the hell does he mean when he says this? I have an in-depth explanation of what the signal, etc. means. I explain to people what brokerages to use, setting up hotkeys, what orders to use, market orders, etc. Right? So we make it very, very easy and simple for people to see what's going on and to essentially follow along. So if you guys want access, click the link down below and let's take a look at crypto. So we have to look at crypto because it gives a good gauge of the overall strength of the financial sector-ish of the market, essentially. So Bitcoin held 108. This was a very, very major level of support. Very, very nice. Awesome. But we are wicking right at this very major level at 112. 112 we were monitoring was a very, very major level on Bitcoin. This big red candle, all of this price action here, 112. So now we are retesting this 112 level, and essentially we need to see if 112 can be broken up to the upside. And what we do is not only just look at Bitcoin, right? It's important because we need to look at the other cryptos as well. So for example, currently, right, this is a chart of Solana. So Solana is very important to look at because Solana affects Bitcoin's price movement as well. Solana is a very, very large coin. So it's important to also monitor Solana because if Solana is doing very, very well and it's, skyrocketing, it can help Bitcoin rise. So as you can see, Solana relative to where Bitcoin is, right? Bitcoin is down here, right? Solana did not even fall that heavily, and Solana is trading very high compared to relative to where Bitcoin is. So we broke above 200 on Solana. This was a falling wedge, very bullish bounce that we're seeing on Solana. For a continued move for a falling wedge, essentially, this candle essentially needs to hold. So the $200 level, if we get a pullback to 200 on Solana, that needs to hold for a continued move to the upside. Overall, this is really, really bullish, man. Overall, this is super, super bullish. The fact that Solana is outperforming is really, really good in my opinion. And it's just going to be the ebbs and flows of the market. So now taking a look at Ethereum, right? Ethereum, same concept. The reason why we're looking at Ethereum is because We need to see and contextualize what's going on with the largest cryptos. Ethereum and Solana are very, very important. If Ethereum and Solana are doing well, but Bitcoin is not, the strength in Ethereum and Solana can affect Bitcoin's price action to the upside. What we're seeing right now on Ethereum is it is lagging. Solana is the biggest winner. The reason for that is because Ethereum was skyrocketing so much recently. Ethereum got so much love to the upside recently. And it only makes sense that Solana is now going to get some love. Ethereum got so much love recently because primarily a lot of these large banks and companies began to use Ethereum, the blockchain, in the back end, in the infrastructure of the company. So, for example, Robinhood started to use Ethereum like idiots. The reason why I say they're idiots is because Ethereum is not good. Compared to Solana, Solana is so much better. So, I personally think in the long term, Solana is such a much better alternative. It's just banks and hedge funds and people that don't know any better think, wow, Ethereum is the second string to Bitcoin. Oh, Bitcoin is gold, Ethereum is silver. No, Solana is so much better. But regardless, what we're seeing regardless is Ethereum is holding support relative to where Solana is. It's showing weakness relative to where Bitcoin is. It's also just showing weakness. We need a break back above 4,500 to reclaim some sort of strength on Ethereum. And if it really starts to break below 42, then we could see a break below 4,000, honestly, because we're at a very important point here. And so let me just clean this up. So we're at a very important point here. This is not only it's a bear flag, right? But it's also starting to try to create a bit of a... Generally, this is a falling wedge. Falling wedges are generally very bullish, right? But if this breaks, if this support level breaks on the falling wedge, that is very bearish, and the momentum can really start to pile on to the downside. But generally, falling wedges are bullish, right? So we need to see if 4,200 can hold a support. That's really it on Ethereum. And with that being said, guys, the overall market as a whole, man, this is starting to we didn't take a look at it, the Russell, but the Russell is also not going to show as much strength like we saw with the overall market, right? So the Russell is going to also show weakness. Generally, this would be such a bearish setup if we were day trading. If this was a day trade, this would be such an amazing opportunity to go short. But because goddamn the market wants to bounce, you can't really go short. But it wants to bounce because of Apple and Google. What are you gonna do? But regardless, this is really, really bearish in my opinion. This is still bearish. The news just really saved the market. For the IWM as well, this is not a bullish setup, guys. If 235 can hold on the IWM as a level of resistance, if 235 here can hold, then this is really, really bearish, and it should continue to fall lower. And that is my thought process on the IWM. And damn, it's just the market is really getting saved by this after-hours news because all of the large indices, the IWM, the QQQ, the SPY, they're all showing extreme bearishness. We gap down at highs into a new month. So this 235 to 236 level on the IWM would be the opportune time for where people would reshort for a continued move lower. With this news, unfortunately, I don't know if that's going to happen. But with that being said, that's that for the IWM. We need to take a look at NVIDIA and AMD. So here's a daily time frame of NVIDIA. I was very, very bullish on NVIDIA in the morning. We played NVIDIA to the upside with a day trade absolutely perfectly. The reason for that, and the reason why it's so easy to look at these things, is because NVIDIA was outside of the lower level of the Bollinger Band. When you're trading outside of the lower level of the Bollinger Band like this, the price wants to return back within the Bollinger Band. So as you can see, this is the Bollinger Band, right? If we're trading outside of the lower band, algorithmically, the price wants to stick, and it wants to get stickied up to inside of the Bollinger Band. So when you're trading outside of the lower bands, you can easily start to lean long. That's why today on NVIDIA, on Meta, both of these stocks were trading outside of the lower bands, and it was an easy long opportunity. That's exactly what ended up happening. So we ended up going long on NVIDIA, and we bounced. Now, what's interesting is, yes, Apple and Google are both showing a lot of strength in the after hours. NVIDIA did not show that much strength, and it's still not showing that much strength in the after hours. What needs to happen on NVIDIA is we need a solid close back above 173 to 174. Even if we were to retest 176 here, in general, if we did not get this bullish news on Apple and Google, this is a really, really bearish setup. Generally, what would end up happening is we would go long here, cool. And then up here at 175 to 176 would be the opportunity to reshort for a lower leg. September is generally a very, very bearish month, and we still couldn't reclaim inside the lower level of the bands. So NVIDIA does have more room to go, but it's not showing that much strength. So we're going to have to see if the 175 to 176 level on NVIDIA holds. Take a look at AMD. AMD held the 156 level of support. We are retesting 163. Same concept. It's just the fact that NVIDIA did not show that much strength. You don't really want to see AMD leading the charge. That's the issue. You never really want to see AMD leading the charge. So with that being said, we have major resistance on AMD back here. Very simple. Very, very simple. We've seen price use this as a very, very sticky level. And what is this? It's also the 618% fib. And it is also a prior fib extension from this move back in July. So this 170 and this 168 to 170 level, very, very major level of resistance. If we break back above 168, spectacular. But it's very, very important. And AMD and NVIDIA are both trying to approach levels of resistance. We're going to need to see if we start seeing some sellers out of Apple and Google because they're skyrocketing in the after hours, right? If we get a bit of a pullback out of Apple and Google, where is this extra money going to go? Generally, it's going to go into the losers. So we're going to need to see if Tesla, Meta, AMD, NVIDIA, Microsoft, we're going to need to see if these tech stocks start showing some love, getting some love. But aside from that, AMD still closed red on the day. NVIDIA, wow. NVIDIA also closed 2% red for the day. Not that bullish. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. With that being said, there's not really much else to talk about. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And I will see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning. Have an amazing day. Thank you so much.